Greetings and welcome to another segment of Veterans of the Cedar Valley. I'm Tom Haggerty. I'll be your host for this segment in this show. In the previous shows, we've had veterans from all different conflicts: World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and other veterans who came on with stories of interest to all veterans community. Today in our studio, I'm joined by Jim Hamlyn, who served in the Army, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, so I'll just say welcome to the show, Jim. And if you would like to, just give us a little background of yourself before you went in the service.
Thank you. I was born in Waterloo, Iowa in 1947, and I went to high school there. I went to all my schools actually in Waterloo. Graduated from West High School in 1965. And then I had a brief period of time I worked at Chamberlain Manufacturing, and then I was drafted into the service.
Okay, and you graduated at 65 from West?
Correct.
So just down the street, I graduated from Columbus.
Okay.
Anyway, but that doesn't have anything to do with this show, other than I did graduate. Jim, I understand that when you were in the service, what was your specialty in the Army?
I was my MOS was 11 Delta 40, and that's kind of what my special qualifications were for, and that was a recon scout. So that's primarily what my specialty was during that period of time.
Okay, and when did you go to Vietnam?
I went to Vietnam. I was drafted in June of 1966, and after basic and advanced training, I went there in December of 1966.
Okay. Where did you go for your preliminary tech school, like basic training and then a tech school?
I was in Fort Polk, Louisiana. I was an A43 Tiger, was my advanced training class.
How long after you were in the Army did you go to Vietnam?
It was from June to December, so about 7 months.
Okay, and then you were in Vietnam for how long?
1 year. Typical tour duty is 1 year.
Okay, and what a little bit about your family background. We'll go back to that. You're married, and how many youngsters did you have?
This is my second marriage currently. Mm-hmm. I'm married and I have 5 children combined. My wife now has 3 children. I have 2, so we have 5 children total.
Okay, and we'll go overseas now. We're in Vietnam with you, and you're serving over there. Tell me a little bit about the first real action that you got into. You sent us a little blurb about some of your buddies were in a firefight.
Well, the first actual mission where we were subjected to hostile activity, directly, was after being there about 1 week. Typically, when you go to Vietnam, you have a week to acclimate to the various conditions, climate, and everything, and they give you some advanced training and different items. And then we went in our first convoy to go to where we were going to be based at. And during that first trip, we were going down a road. It was a well-traveled road, actually, and in about 250, a quarter of a mile or so ahead of us, the convoy was ambushed. And we all obviously had to get out, dismantle our vehicles, and get in the ground and take up cover because we didn't know to what extent it was. And then when we were able to get back in the vehicles and start progressing forward, when we got up there to where the activity was, I saw that there was I'm not sure the number, I believe it was about 6 different veterans that were killed, and they had ponchos covering their bodies with just their boots sticking out.
Well, you got up, you moved forward in a defensive posture to help some soldiers that were either trapped or under fire, and tell us.
Well, at that point, the fire actually had subsided, but we were on full alert, obviously, because we did not know, again, to what extent that controlled ambush was going to be. And but by the time we got up there, it was pretty much over with, and like I said, just the bodies were off to the side of the road.
And this was the first action that you were
Yes.
involved in?
That was my first day out, actually, after
my
that 1
God.
week of being in country.
And And from there, did you end up making it to your forward base? Or,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, we eventually got to our forward base, and I think it was possibly Tainin. I worked in numerous provinces throughout the country, though, so it was Tainin, I'm pretty sure.
And how many were in your unit with you that was moving forward?
We was in a convoy, a large company convoy, and I can't give you I don't recall what the specific number of people was, but in my particular unit, in my platoon, there would be about 50 people.
Okay. I'll let you relate the situation, but at one time, somebody tossed a hand grenade
Yes.
towards you or at you?
Well,
or?
what the deal was, there was this culvert that was, again, it was a main thoroughfare road where there was a lot of transportation, and so about once per month, the Viet Cong or NVA would blow that up, and they would stop the flow of traffic. So what they did, they had us go out there on an ambush patrol, and there was about 12 people. And what you do, you set up a perimeter around the culvert, and we had like 3 people at each location, and you go on guard duty for 2 hours, then you sleep for 4. Well, when we first set up, I noticed about a half a mile out in the field, there was some Vietnamese out there that were observing us, and I just had that feeling that this wasn't right. They were just paying too much attention to us up there. And then after it got dark that night, I was on sleeping. The guy to the left of me was sleeping. The guy to the right of me, he was on guard duty for our 3-person group there. And anyway, they dropped a hand grenade right, and seriously, it landed right next to my foot, about a foot from my right foot. And I'm laying flat again on the ground, and he yelled grenade. I knew it. It woke me up even though I was sleeping, and we all knew it was a grenade, and he jumped on top of me when it went off, and it really did terrible damage to him. His legs and lower extremities were badly blown up, and they evacuated him and then into the center of the perimeter. The guy to the left of me, he was knocked out by the concussion of the grenade, and myself, I have yet to understand how this happened, but in my left hand, which would be the furthest point from where the grenade exploded, I got hand grenade fragments in my hand. It wasn't that bad, but I did get fragments from that. And both of those guys were evacuated into the center, and they left me out there. So eventually, I used an M79. I had an M60 right in front of me, but I used an M79 because if you use an M60, you have a constant flash, at night from the fire. And that's one of the things you're taught not to use because it gives away your distinct location.
Well, when the when the hand grenade was tossed in, did somebody prevent that from hurting a lot of other people?
Well, in that particular case, since we're distanced from there's 12 people combined, and we're in different locations in a fairly decent large perimeter, and so we were the only 3 that were subjected right to the area of the grenade.
Yeah, did an individual save your life at
Yes,
that point?
I believe I've been trying to get a hold of him through various ways, and if anybody sees this that knows, his name is Robert Gardner, and he was from up in Wisconsin, up in the northern part of Wisconsin, and I've been unable to locate him yet, and I want to even extend more. He was awarded the Silver Star, and I wanted to let him know how appreciative I am of his action. I never saw him again after they evacuated him, so.
Well, thank goodness for him helping you out and all that. He was awarded a Silver Star for basically falling on the grenade or protecting you and your other veterans. And you also received a medal for your service in Vietnam. What was that?
Yes, in that case, what it was a road clearing operation where it was one of the responsibilities we have where you have minesweepers. You have typically 2 minesweepers that have like these metal detectors that you see nowadays, only we're a lot more sophisticated. And then you have 2 guys that have a bayonet. Now, they're not armed with guns with them or rifles or weapons or anything. They just have the minesweeper and the bayonets. And what happened, and they're approximately like, I don't know, maybe 300 yards out in front of us or so. And anyway, they got ambushed, and we got ambushed simultaneously, and I was on the first vehicle with a machine gun. So what I did was, of course, we immediately engaged, and then I took the machine gun and threw maybe 200, 400 rounds of belt ammunition over my shoulders, and I ran up to their location where they were. And I put out what it's written up as like accurate suppressive fire that was instrumental in correcting the situation. And then we were able, those guys and myself were able to get back to the perimeter, and it was lessened back there. And when the air support came in, I was able to pick up my camera and take pictures of the jets coming in, dropping the bombs on the hillside.
Well, that's a good segue into one of the reasons that you're on today is because, excuse me, because you had a little hobby of taking some film with 8mm camera or 8mm video, and you came back, and we'll come back from Vietnam right now, and you produced with a couple of your classmates a film to show at your West High reunion.
Correct.
Was that your 50th class reunion?
Yes. What the deal was, I was not in any way professionally trained. It was all self-taught. But what I did is I took the 8mm film and I sent it over to Ohio and had it digitized so I would be able to work with it with a computer. And then I learned a program, Final Cut Pro 10, to use on the computer, and we edited out. And myself and the two gals, Barb Hessel and Linda Kane, who are classmates of mine, both live in Colorado, we wanted to do something a little different for our class reunion than we had done in the past. So what we decided to do was to honor and recognize the veterans that were killed in Vietnam from our class. And so what we did, we went around to family members and had them take and read one of the last letters that were sent to them. And we made a 30-minute video for our classmates for the reunion.
How much film, I'm going to go back to Vietnam again, how much film would you say in 8mm lingo did you take?
Approximately, once it was translated over to digitized, it was approximately 1 hour of viewable film.
And so how long was the CD that you showed to your West High class?
The CD was about 30 minutes long, a little short of 30 minutes.
Okay, and then another unique item about your film, your 8mm film, is that it's been picked up by PBS.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, what the deal is there, when I made it for the school, it got around, they had me do two different showings at West High School to all the students and faculty. It was a couple thousand people. And then they had me going around to different clubs, Lions and Kiwanis, et cetera, in Waterloo, Cedar Falls area. And anyway, this one veteran that has an organization over in Carbondale, Illinois, talked to the senior director producer, Mark St. George, who I gotta say did a tremendous job on editing this out and everything. Initially, what he had talked to me about doing was having a collage of different interviews together, and anyway, and to run simultaneous with the same night Ken Burns' Vietnam show was running.
And we're going to be taking a break here in a minute, but when we come back, I want to talk about not only Ken Burns and the film Vietnam, but your film, the final product. I think it was called Vietnam, A Bad Deal.
Well, it's A Bad Deal, My Vietnam War Story.
We're going to take a time out here and take some commercials to pay our bills, and we hope that you'll come right back. See how fast that.
There were a lot of us that were new, that were going on our very first assignment that time. It was a bad deal.
Welcome back to the second half of the Veterans of the Cedar Valley. My name's Tom Haggerty. I'm your host for this segment. In our studio today, we've been visiting with Jim Hamlyn, who served in Vietnam in the Army and subsequently came back home and found out he had a talent for film editing, and his films that he took over in Vietnam were picked up by PBS. And from that point, Jim, I'd like to ask you, how did PBS get in touch with you, or how did they get the information about you?
A good question. What happened was Mark St. George, who is a producer for WSIU over a PBS station in Illinois, had talked to a veteran over there, and he had mentioned that he had seen my film that I had done and realized that I had exclusive film footage from Vietnam, which wasn't that common of a thing. And so he contacted me and asked me if I would do it, or if I would give them rights to use the film. And I made an agreement with them, as long as it was dedicated to the fallen heroes that were killed from West High School in Vietnam, I'd give them exclusive rights to the film. So they had me go down to IPT down in Johnston, and they recorded me for about a 2-hour interview down there and sent that over to him, and where they was initially going to have it as a group of people giving interviews running right below Ken Burns' Vietnam, they made it, directly made it just a video of my story.
And when is your story, your film is titled A Bad Deal, My Vietnam Story.
Yes.
When is that going to be shown on PBS stations?
Okay, it actually, what the deal was there, APT, who's the American Public Television distributor, they had it, there was several stations that picked it up, and they had it start showing, or they were able to download it on the 14th of May and started showing it at a few stations picked it up, showed it at last Memorial Day, and other stations are currently showing it now. It's going to be, based on the people that signed up for it, it's going to be available in like 200 million homes nationally. So it's going to be playing in a lot of homes here in the upcoming days. So, and weeks, whatever, you know, but it should be, most everyone that wants to see it will be able to see it.
When you showed your combined video to your classmates, was it in black and white, or did they edit it to color?
No, it was in color.
Okay. And I'd like to go just a minute on how many classmates from your class were killed in Vietnam?
Again, there was 5 that were actual that graduated in '65. There was one that was married to a gal in my class that was killed in '64, and there was 4 remaining that were killed in Vietnam. So 10 total from West High School. The 4 were in subsequent graduating years.
When you showed your film to your class reunion, what happened?
It was, it just blew my mind, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought that the people, you know, because these were our friends that were killed. You know, we walked the halls with them, went to class with them. Obviously, some of the girls dated some of the guys and everything. But it just was overwhelming, the positive you know, feedback that we got on the film. And we made 300 copies of DVDs and gave it to them, all of them. And they had us going to different places to show that film and to talk about it, like Kiwanis clubs in West High a couple times, et cetera.
When you made your film and you're asked questions about it, why do you feel your film is important to share with the people in the U.S.?
What I tried to, and I didn't really have a long thought out plan when I took the camera with me to Vietnam, but I did want to kind of capture the land, the people, and the war to some degree. And I think we accomplished that, and I think that people appreciated seeing that hadn't seen it but had heard about it or saw just you know, pre-canned network, you know, film and stuff of Vietnam, et cetera. But
we have a short clip that we want to show that was made by PBS with you.
Okay.
And we'll be right back.
When I first graduated from high school, I went to work at Chamberlain Manufacturing, and what that was a Defense Department munitions place in Waterloo, Iowa. They made the 2.75 rockets for helicopters, and they also made igniters for bombs. And the job that I had was menial non-skilled. I put threads on, with an Acme threader on these bomb igniters. Well, when we called in the jet support, after we examined the area, after everything was over, one of the igniters, exactly the same kind that I made, was there. And that's a pretty interesting memory of mine from over there. It was exactly the same, and I would assume that although Chamberlain made a lot of them, I'm sure that they made them at various places around the country, for bombs and stuff. But I have no clue on that, whether or not it would have been from Chamberlain. But it was really an interesting thing. I mean, I always was a topic when I would share that film, with some of the people from around the area. I told them, I said, hey, this is the same thing that I made when I was working at Chamberlain, the same thing that I put the threads on, And then, of course, that would go hand in hand when you saw the jets come in, drop the bombs, and then afterwards when, like I said, we explored the area and there's some burning stuff around, and then there's an igniter.
Welcome back after that short clip with Jim Hamlyn. Jim, when you were ready to leave Vietnam, how did you preserve your film, or had you already sent it home, or what?
I used to send reels of film home on a regular basis to my father, and like each 50-foot reel, that's what it typically came in, would last about 2 minutes is all. So I sent a considerable number of them home to him.
And then after you got home, did you just put those in the closet for a while, or did you go to work trying to edit them?
Well, no, I didn't do editing on them for quite some time actually, but what I did was the friends that I used to run around with prior to going in the service, we had different parties over at my parents' home, and we showed the films there. And then that lasted for maybe a month or so on and off, and then they just kind of went in the back, closet and were there for quite some period of time.
What made you take them out?
Well, what happened is some of the relatives had been dying, and my dad, who had started taking film with this camera back in the late 50s, had pictures of different get-togethers like Thanksgiving, Christmases, etc., with a family, and extended family members. And so I put those together. After I got them digitized, I sent all the film to get digitized, and then I started putting them together, and people, really, the emotions were really heavy, and people really enjoyed watching them, of the family people they hadn't seen that were passed away, for some time. And so I decided to start doing that with my Vietnam film. And so I made a few versions of that in the early days, and it became very popular.
At your class reunion, when you were showing this video that you put together with your help of your classmates, you mentioned something about reading letters from some of the classmates.
Yes. No. What the deal was there is the veterans that were killed in Vietnam, what myself and a friend of mine did is we went out to all the existing relatives that were still alive, and we called them first to see if they'd go along with it, and had them read one of the last letters that were written from the soldier that was killed before he died. And it's kind of like the Tom Brokaw thing. I don't know if you recall that in World War II. And it was just really very successful.
We have another short clip that PBS made with you, and we're going to show it at this time. Okay. So please stand by.
My father was a veteran from World War II. He was wounded, I think, 3 times, as a matter of fact. He was a tank driver, and I know he's got a number of different awards and was given Purple Hearts, etc. What we would do, as a kid, I can recall, like there was one of the parks in the surrounding Waterloo, I think it was in Evansdale, they had a tank there, and it was a special fascination for him to go to that and to show us, it was one just like that he had driven. He gave me some pretty good advice, I thought, to pay attention, to listen, and learn as much as you possibly can, because the different things you would learn in the training classes, etc., could possibly help save your life down the road, So I did. I paid close attention in all the classes that I was in. Because of the involvement of my father and uncles and grandfather, I just felt it was a duty or an obligation, to just kind of go with it. So I just felt that if I was called upon, it was my duty to do it. I didn't look to any alternatives or even give consideration like deferments, college, or going across the border, getting married and having kids or anything. So, and they were very supportive. My parents were.
Welcome back again to our show, Veterans of the Cedar Valley. We've been interviewing Jim Hamlyn, who served in Vietnam in the Army. Jim, we were talking about various subjects, including your class reunion. And speaking of reunions, have you reached out or had any reunions with your members of your Army service?
No, but there's constant yearly invites to do that. And no, I have not made the arrangements to go to that. I do keep in touch with some of them via email, and unfortunately, a couple of them that I used to contact with have committed suicide.
Oh.
So it's
Yep.
fallen into that statistic. But no, as far as going to any reunions, I have not done that.
Would you go?
I'm not. I've actually thought about it, but I just, it isn't a priority to me. Unfortunately, it should probably be, but.
So how many service clubs or organizations or veterans groups have you spoken to since your film all came together?
I've spoken to a number of individual veterans, but as far as any organized group settings, I have not specifically went to any veterans groups to speak.
If people wanted to get a hold of you after viewing this cable show we do, how do they do that?
Well, I would welcome that, actually. They could either contact me through Facebook. We have a website there that we're putting together, for this here event that's going on now, or else they can go to Facebook and just type in my name. I live in Denver, Iowa. Send me a message and I'll be glad to talk to them.
Okay. We're going to run out of time here shortly, and I wanted to thank you first off for your service, not only in the Army, but in Vietnam, where you received a Bronze Star for your actions, and just coming home and sharing everything with our community about your service in Vietnam. And, yeah, it was an unpopular war, but we did our jobs, and I really appreciate you being willing to come on to the show, and wish you the best of luck with your film, especially knowing that millions of people are going to be able to view what you took on 8mm film in Vietnam today on PBS stations nationwide. And again, I thank you for being with us, Jim, and I appreciate your service. And we'll have another episode of Veterans of the Cedar Valley at another time, and we hope that you've enjoyed being here for this show. And thank you, and come back again.
Thank you.
There were a lot of us that were new, that were going on our very first assignment that time. It was a bad deal.